What's up everybody, I'm Abatage and I'm here to have a shot at critical mass. Why am I having a shot at critical mass? Because I really like this game, like, for a few reasons. This is by Manic Game Studios and is fairly old these days. And it's a three-dimensional puzzle kind of color matchy type, blocky type game. Which we'll see when we get into it. One big problem I have, as I do more of these videos, I'm basically going to tell you the things I don't like at the beginning, but if I'm making a video on it, chances are I like it, so then we'll get into what I like about it for the rest of the video. So the first thing I'll say is, there's a bug where if you have the visual quality on Ultra, it can give you a weird graphical bug that basically makes part of the game unplayable, which we'll talk about when we get into it. I'll point it out when we get there. But that's why I've got it set on high, so this isn't looking as great as it could, but it still looks pretty good in my view once you get in. It's, yeah, pretty straightforward, so let's jump in. And there's a whole bunch of different modes, the classic survival meditation rush. There's little descriptions down the bottom there. So classic is your typical level progression. Survival is to survive multiple stages. Meditation is just don't care about the outcome, just kind of chill and build combos. Rush is like go as fast as you can. So let's jump into classic. Just so I can take my time and explain a few things, I'm going to go into casual because normal and expert really do ramp up the difficulty like there's no tomorrow. So let's jump in, let's do ranked. And this is it. So you've got a cube and a whole bunch of colours. And you need to match 4 or more of the same colour to destroy the blocks. Which is basically the game. I mean, let's be fair, that's what the game is all about and that's what the deal is. However, at the same time, you can see it slowly growing, and it will grow more and more with every block that I put down that does not make a combo or, you know, match colors to disappear and like that. And so, and that's basically critical mass. It will eventually reach a critical mass and explode if you don't make enough matches within enough time, essentially. So if you go through and you just keep throwing down blocks without actually getting a combo, then it will reach a critical mass and the whole thing will blow up and that's game over. And as you can imagine, it gets more and more difficult as you go along. If you match more than 4, you get better score and all that sort of thing. See, I got a good score there, which isn't too bad. So you can see blah blah blah. There's this interesting skill point ranking, which as you do better, it will raise and lower those kind of skill points, which is kind of interesting but weird. And as you can see, the cubes get more and more complex as you head into harder levels and more difficult territory and all that sort of thing. And you can see how it can get quite confusing. I do believe there is a colorblind mode, which is very good for this sort of game. Oh, I'm not doing so well here. Oops, gonna blow. No, we can save it. We can save this. We can save this. Come on, fellas. Yeah, there we go. Get it together. Keep it together. This is the kind of game that it's always hard to commentate because you do really need to concentrate and make snap decisions about where to put stuff so that you can match, but also, you know, get through more blocks so you can complete it before it explodes. And we actually came very close before when it was getting bigger. But let's just continue on with this. And we can talk about it a little bit more. I want to get this different power-up going, because down the bottom here you've got 3 power-ups that come and go as you gain score and as you progress through. The first one is a multiplier, so you get better score. The second one slows down time. And the fusion pulse basically reduces that critical mass back down to 0, so that you're, if it's expanding, it'll just kind of shrink it back down again. I know that's not really necessarily the best way to explain it, but that's what makes sense to me. And the bug that I was talking about initially was if you had the graphical settings on Ultra and you hit the time warp power-up, the whole screen would go black. Don't ask me why, I don't know. If you look at the forums for the game, there are fixes in it, which is essentially set it to high and then set it back to ultra after you've played a game, because it's once the game's already launched and that sort of thing. I don't know why that works, but it does. I'm not that obsessed with needing the graphics on ultra, so I'm quite happy just to play it on high anyway. But, you know, that's something to consider, that you could possibly encounter that sort of bug. And is it something that you want to deal with? Well, that's up to you. May not even happen to you. A lot of people it hasn't happened to, I think. But if we hit the slowdown right now... Oops, that was a bad choice. You can see you get this nice little slowdown of the music. And the whole game kind of just goes a little bit slower, so you can take a bit more time making decisions. And you can just really kind of chill into it like that. So that's pretty much the game, I guess. It gets harder and harder. As you can imagine, on high difficulties, you've got less time before you reach critical mass and it all explodes. And you know, obviously want to try and get bigger combos and all that jazz. And this is not looking so good. Come on, son. Okay, we can do this. Cool. But why do I like it so much? Well, I like it so much because, and this is something that I think is worth mentioning, because especially on games like, small games like this, where it's a fairly simple premise and it's usually reliant on a fairly straightforward mechanic, I find I really appreciate it when it's just a really well put together game. Like, I really like the graphics, I really like the style, I think the soundtrack goes well. It can be a bit repetitive overall, but ultimately it's decent. But the actual gameplay and the actual, you know, mechanics and movement and that sort of thing, it's all very, very smooth, and it's just a really slick, kind of well-developed game. And I really appreciate that, because I figure if you're going to make a game that's, you know, it's not Skyrim or something really complex and full of different details and worked on by hundreds of people and, you know, all that jazz. Not everyone can do that. Most people can't, to be honest. And those games are buggy as shit, and, you know, we still accept that, don't we? So, you know. But that's what I like when you see a little game like this, which does what it does very well, and, you know, it's very slick, it feels very good to play, it feels very smooth and very responsive, and like it does exactly what it's meant to be doing. Whenever I find a game like this, I always love it. Well, I don't always love it, but I always appreciate the fact that the developers have obviously put in the effort to make it as good as it can be. And I think that's something that needs to be recognised, I guess, because there's a lot of shit out there, let's face it. And at the end of the day, you can have a really good game idea, but if you don't... There's some games where they exist, or they subsist primarily on being a really good idea, but they don't do it to the full extent of their capability in that sense. Like, there could be, hey, I know, this is a really great idea for a game, or this is a really good premise for a game. And in my opinion, a lot of those survival kind of games that are out at the moment are kind of that. That's a really good premise for a game, it's really interesting, it has a lot of possibilities and potential, but I haven't seen one yet that's actually made me go, yep, this is it, this is the one. This is the one that just takes the cake and does it all. What's my point to this whole rant? Well, my point is that Critical Mass does what it does really well. And sure, it hasn't got a huge scope like a lot of others because it's a simple puzzle game. It's got a very simple mechanic, and that mechanic is very satisfying to play and very challenging. You really get a sense of tension as you're playing through there, which is why I quit out just then, because I couldn't concentrate on what I was saying. It happens every now and then. But that's why I reckon it's worth checking out, because this game is... If it looks like the kind of puzzle game that you think might intrigue you, I think this is one of the ones that you should definitely try, because it is done really well. Apart from that possible bug that you may encounter, and there may be others that I just haven't encountered, but that's the main thing, I think, for me anyway. I'm not so much a graphics kind of savant. Like, I don't need to play anything at max all the time. I do if I can. Like, I usually play it as high as I possibly can play, just because I want the best experience I can. But for something like this, especially where it's a very simple game, I'm happy to play on high settings and just leave it at that. So, yeah, you'll know already if you think that's good or not, and if it's something that intrigues you. And I often like a lot of these smaller kind of short games because I don't have all the time in the world, so I like jumping in here and playing a few levels, having a good bit of challenge because this is very challenging, and then going about my day. And that's why I really like this game, Critical Mass, and I think it's worth checking out, so that's why we just had a shot at it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.